So hi again, here we are just furthering, chipping away, as I've said before. And so we're now on Sunday, and of course this is the worst day of the week, every week, because you know that all the families are together and your children are at home and there's no other thing that they need to be doing other than being with you. And it's just yet another time, another day and another week done, shilled away to the grave. So I'm just going to keep reading from this psychopath, this sociopath who is keeping my children from me, despite him having had 3 separate partners over 25 years who've all told the New South Wales police, which the Family Law Court failed to act on completely, that they were identikit abused by him, constantly, verbally and emotionally, and occasionally physically. And all of that is recounted in other videos, so I won't bore you with the gory details yet again. But suffice to say that this is the email. So my friend, as I've told you before, I've bought tickets for, jumping subjects there, I've bought tickets to see, for my 3 children and I, to see Professor Brian Cox and the Sydney Symphony Orchestra, with massive big projections of photos of the origins of the universe and just the universe, presumably from the Hubble Space craft or the latest one, and that is on Saturday the 2nd of December, which is less than a month away in Sydney. And my best friend is trying to write to him just to make sure that the 2 kids are provided for this very expensive ticket. And so he's written back today, further to my other email on this, if Danielle ever took the time to actually communicate with the kids. Now remember, this is a man who's blocked them from communicating with me. So we have strike one of a narcissist sociopath. They project the lie, and the egregious, disgraceful mendaciousness is that they project onto other people exactly what they are doing themselves, and they get in first so that you can't, like, this is a Donald Trump move. Like, there's no difference between the pussy-grabbing president of the United States and this pussy grabber who at his own funeral, I was about to say, wishful thinking maybe, at his own wedding, apparently, had a, I'm allowed to say that after being deprived of my children for years by someone who threatened to kill me, and say that he could get away with it because everybody would believe it was in self-defense. So I think I get to say that. I do, he does ride a motorbike, and he didn't take it up till a late age, and there's no way the kids could be on the motorbike, fingers crossed. So, there's always the slight chance that he could, come off it in the wet. What a shame. And slide under a truck. That's what you get to when you're at this stage of being deprived of your own children. It will send you around the bend. But, he has sent many others around the bend for 25 years. So he's written back this email. Further to my other email on this, if Danielle ever took the time to actually communicate with the kids, and of course he blocks all communication, so how the fuck am I supposed to do that again? Turn up at their house, bam, he calls the police, puts an AV on. She would realise this is something she, in big capital letters, is interested in. And again, she's trying to impose her will on the kids. So I'm trying to impose my will for my children to be educated with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra and see Brian Cox, and I haven't seen them all year at all. You see how fucking sick this person is, right? This is why Michelle Daly, who's a senior New South Wales government bureaucrat, hi Michelle, hope you're watching, you coward, that's why she said that he was unwell. She called him in her voicemail message, which is totally admissible to a court of law because she knew she was leaving it. She called him really unwell. And he's really unwell. So he's doing a classic narcissist move, a Donald Trump move, and trying to push on to somebody else what he's doing himself, perpetrating. And then he says, further, you'd be aware that DCJ has conditions in place for Augie's protection from psychological injury from Danielle. Well, actually, I've read out to you before, and if I haven't, I'll do it now. A direct legal representative is what your child has in that system. And he told them, after my own sister on the Northern Beaches tried to give my son away to a foster carer after I'd had a nervous breakdown. So she had 4 boys of her own. She married into wealth, and then after 1 year, she decided that she didn't really like him, and she tried to give him away to a woman called Yale Michelle at Mona Vale, who I've contacted and found out this is true. Nobody told me any of this while it was happening. And so 1 week after he was placed with this mendacious, malicious piece of work, Ian Little, he told his direct legal representative, Dennis Chapman, up at Gosford, that he was 3 years straight. This was the 3rd year he'd said, please give me back to my mother. The entire Australian court system and caseworkers ignored him. So they placed him with this man who then, surprise, surprise, eroded, used that as, oh, great, well, yeah. It's a good way to keep assaulting this woman, depriving her of her own children, after he himself has been found by 3 separate women to be dangerous over 25 years. And he says, DCJ has conditions in place for Augie's protection from psychological injury from Danielle. Is there something difficult to understand around this? I failed. No. Is there something difficult to understand about how the Australian court system would award to a man who's abused 3 separate women over 25 years, all on the police record and all in exactly the same way? And when his children, no offence to them, they're lovely people, but they did nothing with their mentality, with their intellect. They just did nothing. They, his eldest daughter in France and his middle daughter, they're nice people. They're truly nice people. I've met them plenty of times, but they didn't really have any chance because neither of their parents cared about their intellect whatsoever. And of course, I deeply care about my children's development on every level, particularly their intellectual and musical and emotional development. And that's proven by my nannying work like 2 years ago. So there's a heap so he basically is gaming the system because this disgusting moral hazard has transpired where where a perpetrator has been rewarded, not only got away with it without punishment, but then been rewarded with the very children whose parents he abused, whose mothers he abused. And then he refers to my eldest daughter who, because her father, Tim Friedman, took her from me against family law court orders for 3 years, the nanny rang me up and told me what she was doing to herself and how she'd plunged emotionally and mentally off a cliff, which she's brought herself out of to her great credit, but not before Tim imposed that on her and she went through years of counselling. But this liar, this flagrant liar Ian Little is seen in this email here today 1 hour ago, saying she's undertaking her own psychological counselling and journey now. Well, no, she had to because her father ruined her mental health, and I have subpoenaed her psychologist's record for this case and others because I will be suing him for the deliberate infliction of mental and emotional harm on me. Why not? These people deserve it. They have done it. They did it deliberately. They did it knowing that it was harming their children through the evidence that was coming, the fact that their children were in pain. And so it is really well known that a loving parent like me being kept from their child is going to psychologically harm any child, but particularly my child. And it already has, and it is, and it will, and it's going to keep going because they're all in a lot of pain. I allow her to talk, he continues, to Danielle yesterday, and what happens? I had to terminate the conversation, this little control freak did, and he did that because I said, Maddie, it's customary in conversation, because every single time I talk to my daughter, one of the big red flags in this as well is that he doesn't inculcate because he doesn't have any care for anybody. Like, he's that sick here and here and here and here. He's that sick that he genuinely doesn't give a flying fuck about anybody else. Like, he really doesn't. I had the displeasure of watching him serve at high speed a tennis ball, which went awry on a tennis court years ago in 2013, 10 years ago. And it hit his then 13-year-old daughter, Roxy Little's head, directly on the head. And it was a powerful shot. You know, like it's the same metaphor for the rest of his life. You know, he does it with power, but the wrong way. Smashed into her head, and she dropped to her knees in pain, crying out from the pain of such an impact. And he dropped to his knees laughing. And I mean, you know, you can always argue that Australia's Funniest Home Videos has a huge amount of our ancient human love for slapstick. And of course, the Romans absolutely adored watching slaves being torn to pieces by lions. But not when it's your own child, right? Something screwy, something fucking sick in the head. And in the same way that he belted his stepson Lewis Green over the head until his nose bled on a trampoline and was ordered into anger management by an Australian federal law court judge in the family law court, but just not the judge that we got. So you, like I keep explaining, you get this lottery round of different judges and they give you a different deal. It's like literally playing, it's a gamble. And it shouldn't be. This should be criminalised and outlawed. So he says, I allow her to talk to Danielle yesterday, and I had to terminate the conversation. Well, that's because I pointed out to my daughter, who's 11, I said, Madeline, it's customary at this point in any conversation, because she has all year, the same thing has been the case. So I finally had to point it out to her, that normal human beings who have any degree of reciprocity in their relationships, any degree of mental and emotional care for each other, you express it by even, down to lip service. People say, oh, hi, how are you? Even if they're just waiting for, yeah, I'm good, thanks, blip, so you can move along and green lit in the conversation, you can move along. Even if that's people are just doing it out of manners and being polite. And this is, of course, something that you want to cultivate and inculcate in a child because, of course, society and civility is based on this, right? Theoretically. All the men out there butchering, raping and murdering, but back when they've got their masks on and we're all pretending that we're not those apes, or at least that half of us aren't those apes, we have to conduct ourselves in a civil manner. And most of this is about expressing some care for another person, particularly your mother. So he hasn't inculcated or engendered or encouraged or enculturated any normal humanity in my children where it's manners. It's called manners. How are you today? How's things? What have you been up to? Are you okay? What's going on in your world? Nothing. On the scant few, there I did again, tautology. On the scant amount of times I've got through to her this year, and to my son, who's just an angry train wreck under Ian Little, because Ian is vicious, verbal, and he even draws back and goes to spit at people. This is who's got my children. And so my son's deeply fucked up by this. And he says he had to terminate the conversation. Then he says, the clown bangs on, that's me. The clown bangs on about how she cares for children and is educated without acknowledging a huge rule that most normal adults now understand. Well, you see, that's what I said to him yesterday, most normal adults. I said to my daughter yesterday, and that's when he was listening to her conversation, which was being broadcast into the room because he controls her and supervises her. Too scared to actually let her have a normal conversation. Because I noticed that the glaring omission, the elephant in the room in all of these conversations, is that she doesn't make any inquiries whatsoever anymore about just even normal, how's your day and what are you up to, mum? And, oh, how are you? I hope you're okay. What are you doing with your day? Nothing. And this is a child who in my care once collapsed in just a puddle of tears as we were walking through Martin Place, and she saw a man with a clown's nose on, and he was just putting a hat around and doing some funny, silly little expression on his face, but he had no shoes on, and his shoes were black and filthy. And we gave him some money. We stopped to give him some money, and we walked away. And I said, "Darling, that man's homeless." And because she looked at me, I said it to her after she looked at me. She said, "Mummy, he had no shoes on, and all his feet were black." And I said, "Yes, darling. Well, that's because that man is homeless, and he's trying to beg for money. And so he was trying to put on a brave face and be a clown. And she just did what I did and burst into tears because she had, in my care, genuine empathy for other human beings, and so did my son. So he was the nicest little gentle boy on earth, and now he's twisting his sister's arm back and bashing it into chairs, and he's angry, and he's giving attitude and lip to everyone. And I think he learnt that on the northern beaches at my sister's house. She's got 4 boys in the house, and it's a big, footy playing. You got to be a macho. That's what the measure of a man is football. Where such a stupid game like rugby, you could get your fucking neck broken, right? So these apes, as far as I'm concerned, they're apes. And then he continues, this clown bangs on about how she cares for her children and is educated without acknowledging a huge rule that most normal adults now understand. Well, not like he does, obviously. Do not disparage the other parent in front of the child. With his brittle little ego again. When I said, darling, it's because you're not being taught in the household you're in to be brought up with manners and care and in compassion and inquiry. And he went, shut it up now! You know, burst out in his little fucking narcissist, barely controlled rage. He bursted out now. So, you know, she's scared and she hung up the phone. Any future calls Madeline asked to make will be monitored by me, well, they already are, and terminated if Danielle breaches code. Stupid piece of shit. He's doing it himself. She needs to just stop her shit and try and care and try and care. I have to try and care, do I? No. Caring is an effort for this person, so he definitely has to try and care. To be a reasonable parent. Oh, what a reasonable parent who just hasn't seen their child since Christmas Day and it's fucking November at the Melbourne Cup. So look, you know, this is legal. One more time. And I gave you a bum steer on another broadcast here. The submissions was back in February for the Family Law Court Act, but there's one other little tailing part when you little leftover part. Sorry, I'll just pick this letter up when you go to. This was the blow off from Alison Burns this week. So if you wish to make a contribution to this process, then the link for the Family Law Act reforms shuts on the 10th of November. So that's this week. So, you know, please, it's got to be Friday this week. So you go to consultations.ag for Attorney General, .gov.au/families and marriage, all broken up by a hyphen, /exposure/draft/family/law/ I mean, actually wrong. You'll find it. Amendment Bill number 2. And what I'm asking you to do is go over to that and in one simple sentence say, it is preposterous that in 2023 in Australia, you can go to jail and or get a criminal record and or get a hefty fine and or get a community service order put on you in a criminal court for failing to pay your parking fine and then driving your car, despite the fact that your skill set's fine, but nothing happens to you whatsoever if you steal a child against family law court orders, which I have. Nothing at all. I'm going to keep saying it. So go over, please, help. And also I have a GoFundMe link here because the 1 hour for them to read my affidavit that I've already done all the work on so that the lawyers don't get to eat my money up. I've done the work on it and I've lodged it. And so to read that, of course, like I said the other day, they charge you in increments of 6 minutes. So there's 10 increments per hour and they charge $500 an hour. So they want $1,000 up front before they'll see me in the next 2 weeks because they cocked up the meeting they were meant to have this week when I phoned to make sure it was happening tomorrow. On and on this absolutely tormenting, torturous bullshit goes. Please put this around. Please make a contribution to the GoFundMe fund for lawyers. I will show you how every single cent has been spent. Okay, and at the moment it's got $1,900 in it and $1,000 already has gone just to a meeting which hasn't even happened. So time is of the essence, please, people. Thank you, I'm going to go. Thanks, bye.